We've worked our way up to chapters 20 and 21 of the book of Genesis, and the story gets very interesting here. There's some troubling accounts in these particular chapters. One of those, a troubling thing, is that once again, Abraham turns his wife over to another king to protect himself. This king is King Abimelech of the Philistines. But once again, God protects Sarah. Here's Abraham is walking with the Lord. He's followed the Lord. He's been given the promise of a son named Isaac eventually, and yet here he is reverting to his old sins. Sometimes those sins that we've harbored and we thought we had victory over come back to haunt us, and we fail once again. That's a troubling time when it happens, and Abraham does that. But God protects her, and Abimelech sends Abraham out, and away he goes, and he moves on. But that's mostly the chapter 20 that we're looking at. But we also find in this story that that Hagar is now going to be chased out of town. But before that, well, let's go to Hagar. Look at verse 9. Hagar's who has a son, Ishmael, as you recall. Sarah and Hagar just never got along, as you can imagine, and so Sarah is so upset that she wants Abraham to send her away, and she leaves. And when she is sent away in verse 14, she probably thought she was going to die, but the Lord comes to her in verse 16 and says, the boy will not die, and the Lord takes care of her. It says, verse 17, do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad, and that he will be fine, and he's going to make him a great nation. Verse 20, God was with the lad, and he grew up, and he lived in the wilderness, became an archer. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. So he's going to have a great nation that comes from him as well. But we turn back to the earlier part of chapter 21 to a delightful story. This is a story that's been waiting for 25 years to take place. Abraham had left his homeland for a bare promise from God, that God would bless him, that God would give him a son who would carry on in his name and carry out the Abrahamic covenant. No son has materialized throughout these times. But the Lord did show up several months before and promised that Isaac would be born, but there's still been no Isaac born. And now we've come to the time of his birth. In verse 2 of chapter 21, so Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age. Verse 3, they named him Isaac. Isaac means laughter. And it's interesting because remember when the Lord had once again come to Abraham and said, Isaac is going to be born, Abraham laughed because he didn't believe God. And then later on when the Lord reiterated that same thing and Sarah overheard the account, what did Sarah do? But she laughed as well. And so a lot of laughter has been going on. But in both those cases, that was not humorous laughter. They were not laughing out of joy. They were laughing out of doubt. They were really mocking God. Often in Scripture, when you hear about laughing, it is a mockery of some kind. And so Abraham has, in essence, mocked God, doubted God. Sarah did the same thing. But the Lord has kept his promise despite their lack of faith. And now they're going to have a son. They do have a son. And he will bring laughter. In verse 5, now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And that's exactly what would take place. That was a beautiful story. Finally, the boy of promise has been given, and they now have a little boy, little Isaac, that they can raise for the Lord. And that would begin a new chapter in the life of Abraham and Sarah. We're about ready to begin to unravel and complete their life and move on to Isaac's. But there's a couple very significant things that must take place first. And we're going to see those when we come back together next time, especially in verse 22, chapter 22. So I hope you can read that as you prepare for the greatest challenge in the life of Abraham that he ever had. How will he do? He's had some failures during trials. What about this time? We'll see next time.